Hey, and good evening, and welcome to this live call for independent learners. I can't believe this is already the second to last live archetype call. Next week will be our final one next Friday for the heroes. So I hope you'll join me for that one. And again, if you still don't know your student archetype, head on over to alexellison.com/quiz, take the really simple, fun student archetype quiz, and find out your type. Maybe you're an independent learner, which we'll talk about today, but maybe you're one of the other types, and you can certainly view the recordings of all the live archetype calls on my YouTube channel, and you can certainly share these with friends or parents who you think might benefit from these. Also know that all of these archetypes are sort of the anchor in my new book, Go Your Own Way, 7 Student-Centered Paths to the Best College Experience, which is available now on Amazon. So if you were with me last week when we talked about skeptics, you might notice that the skeptics and the independent learners are actually similar in many different ways. While skeptics and independent learners are both similar in many ways, while skeptics and independent learners question common conventions and don't take anyone's word for it, independent learners are a bit more like the adventurers in that they are eager to explore their world, get their hands dirty, learn by doing, put themselves in uncomfortable situations in order to have sort of these new and novel experiences and learn something new. You might think all independent learners are the homeschooler types, but when I interviewed Ben for the independent learner chapter in my book, he shared with me that he was mistaken early on by believing he needed to go it alone. What he really needed was community, just a different one. See, go your own way doesn't mean you have to do this thing alone. In fact, you're probably better off surrounding yourself with interesting people you can learn from. Independent learners need to be given new and different ways of learning. The idea of learning in one confined space kind of drives them crazy, even if they can't articulate that exactly. In fact, I've seen independent learners mistakenly think they're not good at school simply because they're in the wrong learning environment. This is so important to recognize for those guiding or those guides or parents to independent learners. Don't assume that because your student is doing poorly in school that they will do poorly in all schools. The wonderful thing about planning for the next phase in your educational career is that you have so many more options to choose from. Independent learners should consider traveling schools like Minerva University, which literally is a traveling university. It offers online learning to student cohorts who travel together to a new country every semester. Or they might like one of the work colleges like Deep Springs or Warren Wilson, where manual labor is really honored along with classroom learning. Independent learners might also thrive at universities where they can design their own major or program of study. Many colleges offer this now, like take New College of Florida or the University of Washington, or simply schools with more flexible curricula or no general education requirements like Grinnell College in Iowa. So be open to the possibilities, including a gap year, which I think many are thinking about for independent learners. But not all independent learners will want to do this, but it's definitely a great option for many. But make sure you don't write off college completely just because high school felt too restrictive. I promise college can be different. It does not have to be more of the same. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions for independent learners who did not do well in high school. It's that they think college is just sort of high school 2.0, and nothing could be further from the truth if you find the right college environment. So I want to get to some of your questions now. Let's see, first one here. Is it wrong to assume that all independent learners should do a gap year? And I kind of hinted at this earlier, but yeah, I think it is wrong to assume that. However, I like to give everyone the opportunity to know that they are allowed to take some time off between high school and college. I never like to assume that everyone's going to go right to college from high school. In fact, when I work with students, I ask them, what year are you graduating and what year are you starting college? Because those might not be the same year for many students. So I do like to give students that flexibility. Now, for a student who's feeling quite jaded about schooling in general, taking some time to really see the world, dive into new experiences, get their hands dirty could really be the best thing for them. But I wouldn't, for example, say, you know, okay, you hated high school, we're going to do a gap year, and then I'm going to send you to a really conventional, strict, structured university. Like, that's not going to make anything better. So it would be better to take your independent learner on some really rich college visits to really see these schools that are different and doing things differently, to get them excited about college. Because on a gap year, you're more likely than not probably not going to be visiting colleges. You're going to be doing something else. So I think take this time now in the spring or the summer, if you're a rising senior, to go visit some amazing places. I realize my son's high school isn't ideal for him as an independent learner, but what can we do short of homeschooling him? Yeah, and this is fair, right? Like, I think a lot of parents of independent learners and also artists and skeptics find that their student is not thriving in the high school environment, and there's a bit of a panic, like, well, where else do we go? Especially, I work with a lot of students in more rural areas, and there aren't a lot of schooling options. So what I've found is really helpful is, one, to recognize that it's not it's not that the student isn't thriving or that the student's lazy or apathetic, which sometimes skeptics can be labeled that as well, just like independent learners, if they're not doing well. So to avoid those labels and to really say, okay, what is it about the environment that is maybe holding you back, or isn't motivating, or isn't inspiring? And then how can we supplement your experience, your learning experience, outside of school? That way school doesn't become the focal point. Like, school isn't the only thing that you're living for, because that's kind of depressing for anyone, but especially someone who doesn't really like school. So I think if you don't have the option to switch learning environments, just expand the learning environment and know that there are so many rich experiences that happen beyond those four walls. And I think then you'll start to create sort of a balance, so that there's sort of a reason to go to school, but also that school isn't the only thing that you're living for. And I think that'll make it more sort of bearable. Also, I think visiting colleges and doing job shadows and getting some career exposure and getting excited about this life after high school could really help you see high school as just a means to an end. If you're not enjoying it, that can also make it a bit more bearable, give you something to look at, give you the light at the end of that tunnel. So those are some tips that I would recommend. Getting out and looking at schools is one of the best things I've found to really motivate students who are less than excited about continuing their education. And in many cases, that is the independent learner. Next question. Do independent learners have to go to a quirky school? This is great. And this is, I definitely, like, full disclosure, I am biased. I love the quirky schools. I often promote the quirky schools. I'm a fan of colleges that change lives. I started building my own weird schools college list because I love those, like, hidden gems in the schools that are doing things differently and not trying to be everything to everybody. I've always really been drawn to those types of schools. So I would say no, an independent learner does not have to go to an unconventional school, but I would make sure that you're finding the less conventional option within a more conventional school if you do decide to go to a more conventional school. So I mentioned in my introduction the University of Washington. Well, the reason I did that is because the University of Washington has an independent designed program where a student can come in. It's a really rigorous process. You have to apply, you have to have a program of study really planned and accepted by your advisor, but you can basically create your own program of study. And a lot of schools are doing this now, whether it's create your own major or create your own independent program of study. So that's a great option at these larger kind of flagship state schools that you might kind of deem as a little bit more conventional, if you will. Another example would be University of California at Santa Barbara, which has this College for Creative Studies. So what that allows you to do is have a more independent approach, a more creative approach to otherwise sort of straightforward conventional majors, like English or biology. So that would allow you to take one of those majors and really get more hands-on with it and be a bit more creative in that space. So these programs exist even at less than quirky schools like UC Santa Barbara or University of Washington. So definitely keep your eye on those specialty programs within the university. I'm also a fan of many honors colleges at these larger flagship universities, which aren't always great for independent learners, but can certainly give students a bit more sort of focus, more of a VIP experience. a bit more rigor in their academics. So that's a nice way to kind of create a micro community within a large university. Some of the more well-known honors programs at flagship universities would be the Barrett Honors College at Arizona State or the Clark Honors College at University of Oregon. So check those out. So I think that's all we have time for today for questions. Thank you so much for coming to today's call. Again, I'm going to be recording this live call so you can share it with anyone you think would benefit. And again, if you haven't yet taken the student archetype quiz, head on over to my website, alexallison.com/quiz, find out your archetype, and go check out the book so you can get the full information, all of the case studies for all the archetypes. That's available at Amazon. Go Your Own Way, 7 student-centered paths to the best college experience. And I hope you'll join me next Friday for the final archetype call. This has been a really fun 7-part live call series. Again, the next and final call will be for the heroes. So I hope you'll join me. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, and stay in touch. You can also get on my newsletter by hopping over to the website. So if you want more information about your archetype, tips and tactics for college admission that is not stressful or daunting or cultish, then you can certainly hop on my newsletter, and I think you'll probably benefit from that.